Peace and love, family. Welcome to another powerful Read Book Club discussion. Tonight, we are discussing the myth and propaganda of black buying power. By Dr. Jared A. Ball. Again, the name of our new book is The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power by Dr. Jared A. Ball. And I have with me tonight a special guest. I have three special guests with me tonight. My dear brother Geechee Ya, and his crew. His crew. How you doing tonight, brother Geechee Ya?
Peace, peace. So I'm here with my team. I'm a humble servant of my team, the Barter and Build Think Tank. Just a few representatives. I'll let Asafo and Sister Veronica introduce themselves, but I'm happy to be on here with y'all.
Um, yeah,
I'm Veronica Ankrum.
I think, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you,
Yes.
sister.
Okay, great. And I'm just happy to be here.
All right, happy to have you, sister. Go ahead, brother Asafo.
I'm Asafo Shaka Sekou, and I'm a founding member of the Built Think Tank. I'm a writer, lecturer, community activist, and I'm happy to be here with you as well for this discussion.
Beautiful, happy to have you. And I have my
Awesome.
brother T Wolo in the building. Big brother T, go ahead and introduce yourself.
How you doing, my brother Brother T Wolo? Always a pleasure to be here to talk about some excellent books that can help our community understand what we need to do next. Dr. Mott, always a pleasure.
And brother
And panel, a pleasure.
and
Hey,
brother
hey,
T. Hold on,
real-
brother
okay,
Geechee Ya. Oh no, go ahead and speak.
No,
speak
no, I
about
was
it.
just letting you know. I told the team this feels like one of those church visiting meetings. So if you went to church, you would take one church to another church, one study group to another study group. So happy to
Awesome.
be in the house of the Lord one more time.
Absolutely. I was just going to say to brother T that I think this book, and I'm only 20 pages in, that I think that it was just a really good segue, from The Hidden Cost of Being African American by Thomas Shapiro.
Hmm.
Like it was a good segue from there to here, and so I'm really excited. So far, to be honest, I really don't disagree with a lot of the things, a lot of the ideas and concepts that Dr. Ball
Hmm.
has presented so far. But let's jump right into it. And brother T, you know that I like to first define words.
Yes, most definitely.
And so we the title is The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power. And I know the two words that really stick out, right, are propaganda and power when you think about it. And so I love how Dr. Jared Ball on page 18, he gives us a wonderful definition of what propaganda is. And he talks about the power of propaganda. And so he defines propaganda, he says, as a process of persuasion. It is value neutral. It is the intention behind the propaganda that demands scrutiny. And it is the intention which begs value judgments, not propaganda itself. Propaganda, consciously targeted messaging meant to impact, limit, manipulate, inform public opinion, is any organized or concerted group effort or movement to spread a particular doctrine or a system of doctrines or principles. It is mass persuasion with a purpose that advantages the sender. Propaganda is also understood to have a persuasive function intended to reach a sizable target audience, be representative of a specific group's agenda, and make use of faulty reasoning and or emotional appeals. He says today, propaganda has been described as the primary means by which the elite communicate with the rest of us. Woo!
Mm.
That was truly, in my opinion, that was a powerful those were powerful definitions. And I think he did a wonderful job laying it out. And then the definition of power. I should go to Dr. Amos Wilson on that one, right?
Right.
On what power is. Let me break out the Bible. I call this my Bible. I've read every page of it. And so in chapter 1, Dr. Amos Wilson defines for us what is power. Okay, he says power refers to the ability to do, the ability to be, the ability to prevail. Okay, that's one definition of power. And then he tells us that there are different forms of power: power to and power over, right? Power to, he says, includes the definition of power as the ability to get what one wants. All right. Power over emphasizes the use of power by one person or group to constrain or restrict the possibilities or options of another person or group. Brother Geechee, do you want to talk about the definition of a myth? I just kind of want to lay it down before we, before we jump into it. The definition of a myth.
Yeah, I mean, I would say something because mythology doesn't necessarily always have to be bad. It could be something that's inspirational as well. But so I would say it's something to um, either allegorize something or put a message in an inspirational form in some kind of way. But um, it's definitely not scientific fact. It's definitely not things that can necessarily be proved as opposed to something that could be um, massaging someone's conscience to impart some information into them. So it's really kind of like propaganda in a way, but it's more of propaganda could be true and packaged in a way, but a myth can't be verifiable.
Absolutely. I mean, and I couldn't agree with you more. And so he says the myth and propaganda of black buying power. And so what is that exactly? Well, he's talking about family. We keep hearing the $1.2 trillion, right, that black people spend in a year. I mean, literally, you hear that over and over and over again. And the first time I heard of it, and he mentions this in his book, was in the Nielsen's report. I downloaded it. It's a free report. I downloaded it on the internet, and I was like, wow, and they telling you all of the things that black people spend, and one would think, right, that, oh my goodness, we spend very frivolously when you analyze the report, right? It tells you everything that we buy, and it says that, yeah, we have a buying power of $1.2 trillion. Not only did I hear it there, but I've heard some of our greats, some of our lecturers, a lot of the people that we hold in high regard. They said we have the buying power of $1.2 trillion. And so we should be able to develop our own communities. We should be able to build schools and build our own communities. So why aren't we doing it? Well, we need to stop buying, liquor and weed and strip clubs. And, so they'll say things like that. And so when I first came across Dr. Ball's book, maybe like a year ago, and I brought him on the platform and interviewed him, by the way, I said, Doc, what do you mean it's a myth? He said it's a myth. He said it's simple. He said just do some simple math, and the simple math is this, Brother Geechee. He said that the median income of black families is $40,000, and you have about 40 million black people. Now, 40 million times 40,000 is $1.6 trillion. So he said, wait a minute. If we spent $1.2 trillion per year, that means that everyone, regardless of age, would have to literally spend every dollar that they have. And so when he put it like that, I said, oh my goodness, I haven't been thinking. I didn't look, you're looking at these reports and we're not applying critical thinking to them. We just see the titles, and then we hear our greats parrot this stuff. And so we then it becomes truth after a while, right? If we don't apply critical analysis to it. But does anyone want to jump in?
I mean, you nail on the head with that, and it's the truth. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes.
Awesome. When he also wrote in these first couple pages that we could not spend our way into wealth, because no other community has ever like built the nation or anything up by spending. So it's like everyone is a producer of something. So it made you take a little switch, a mental switch, exactly on how we can definitely build wealth in our community. But just like you said, dealing with the myth of actually, hey, if I just don't if I just save more money, we'll be in a better situation. Or if I stop spending my money on in Jordans, it would put me in a better situation. And that is one of the biggest things that we found to be like a fallacy. So we can't just save our way into a better situation. And he definitely stressed that in the first couple pages of the book.
Right.
Mhm.
Let me make a comment, and then I'm probably gonna throw alley hoop to Asafo because he definitely gonna drive this point home. But another thing that Jared is gonna cover is 44% of Black people's income goes to rent, right?
Hmm.
So when you look at our family members and stuff, a lot of us not owning houses. Even some of our old parents are renting, right? So if 44% goes to rent, that number is knocked down. And then what about healthcare and food? That number's knocked down. But kind of spinning on what Dr. Mayat was saying earlier, this concept of myth, right? Is myth necessarily bad? So people that I've talked to, including Brother Jabari at times, they have a knee-jerk reaction to the response. And then it's like, well, that might be true, but that don't mean that we have to, we don't have to like get rid of this idea. And I'm like, okay, if a myth is not helpful to us, should we dismiss the myth or keep the myth and use it for our good, right? And so again, the alley hoop might go to Asafo, but like, is it that bad that the myth is out there? Okay, it's a myth. Okay, is it that bad? Is it okay for us to keep moving forward?
That was a perfect
Well,
example. Sorry. It's a
I'm
perfect
sorry. Go
example of
ahead. Yeah, finish
what
your point.
Dr. Mott was saying. I just want to say this one point Dr. Mott said earlier. Once you put the numbers together and realize that this possibly can't be the case if you're spending all of your income, people just don't know how to count. So once you realize that you have to, like you said, 40% goes to rent just to live. Where's the other money going? It's going. Are you putting money away for retirement? Are you putting money away for the kids to go to school or starting a business? The money's not there. So, like once you put the numbers together, 40 million people making $40,000, you realize that hey, we got to start doing math. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and where's the disposable income?
Right.
It just doesn't exist.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely. And go ahead, Brother Asafo. Mhm.
no, yeah. So and I think one of the reasons why this myth is being propagated is because our Black entrepreneurial class, our Black bourgeoisie, are controlling the narrative, and the idea in their minds, what they see as Black power, what they see as Black self-determination, is rather than the Black economy, quote unquote, being in control of white capitalists. They want the Black economy under their control, with the Black masses going to them and being under them and being subservient to them. So, Black buying power, Black banking, buying Black, these myths, this constellation of mythology, if you will, around Black economics, are they serve as really a form of tacky marketing on the part of our Black entrepreneurial class. They form a form of tacky marketing. So okay, well, if the process to liberation is through buying Black and supporting Black businesses, here, we're the Black entrepreneurs. We're selling you these products. We're selling you all these things. Come and buy from us and enrich us. But again, that wealth is only going to go to the enrichment of a small petty Black bourgeoisie, and it's not going to go to the masses of Black people.
Asafo, I beautiful. Like, could you break down? And I love how he talked about Jay-Z and Jay-Z's song, The Story of OJ. And he was saying, and I would have to find it. I know
Talk
that
about
it's been like,
Dumbo and flipping.
yeah. And Jay-Z talked about, financial freedom, our only hope, something, and dying broke, and he said he calls himself Dumbo because he didn't invest in some apartment complex that was worth something. And
under the bridge in Brooklyn. It was
he didn't invest in that, and so he missed out on that. And so Dr. Ball was saying that, look, Jay-Z is promoting the idea that we can invest in that the reason we're in our economic condition, or let me restate that, but that the reason that we are in our economic condition is because of our ignorance. We don't know how to invest. We don't know how, to save. We don't know how to flip, basically, and that's why we're in this situation, in that financial freedom could be acquired by investing, saving, and flipping, basically. And so I love how he broke that down. And so I'm curious, Asafo, what are your thoughts on his breakdown regarding that whole Jay-Z song? Did you agree with Dr. Ball's points that do you think that the lyrics promoted the idea that Black people are ignorant, that we are financially illiterate, and that's why we're in the economic situation that we're in, and that we need to just flip our money, put our money in houses, put our money in whatever, in order to improve our economic condition in America? So what are your thoughts, Brother Asafo?
Yeah, I believe that I agree 100% with what Dr. Ball is saying about Jay-Z, and I would extend that to many of the other Black celebrities who speak on this issue, and in the final analysis, that's why they are where they are, to ultimately drive the conversation and the discussion away from systemic racism, the systemic subjugation, deprivation of Black people, and stripping of their wealth, and stripping of their political power and economic power, the oppression and genocide against Black people, the systemic genocide and oppression against Black people. We're going to drive the conversation away from the effects those things have. And we're going to talk about, well, we just need to be more financially literate. We just need to be able to know how to invest our money and buy up the block and all these other things.
Yeah,
so
like,
I'm sorry. It's classic blaming the victim.
Yes, 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 it is.
And that's why Jay-Z has been able to rise to the heights that he's been able to rise to, just so he can blame the victim and put the emphasis on blaming Black people for their own oppression, and take the emphasis off the role that the system of white supremacy plays.
Absolutely. And Brother Geechee, I know that you are a student of Dr. Amos Wilson's work as well, but I forgot. Oh, somebody, can you mute? Somebody's like, yeah, some people, I heard somebody yelling, where are you? Yelling, just mute, please mute. But Brother Geechee, what did Dr. Amos Wilson call that in Blueprint for Black Power? Was it the myth of inequality or something like that? I don't know if he called it the myth of inequality or the something of inequality, where the government will try to blame, or the elite or the powers that be will blame Black people for being in a position. They'll blame the poor for being poor. He called it something.
I don't remember. I don't remember what that was.
Yeah, he called it something. I'm gonna look for it tonight. Go ahead, Brother T.
Yeah, but the mentality of benign neglect is all put on the play into that. But it reminds me of what through the Nixon administration is when he was pushing Black capitalism. Anything for him to stop the Black Panthers and the movement, and talking about. So they said let's push this agenda of them starting their own business, and so they can stay away from politics and act for any policies. And this is what Dr. Ball puts into play, that we have run away from policy, and we created this facade of if I only had the right time and invested in Dumbo, just that little spot under the bridge in Manhattan, I would have been rich by now. Or if I just invest in some art, anything that kind of pushes away from and for fixing the problem, and understanding that laws are written, and we have to understand the policies in order to move forward. And like the brother stated, is that anything to keep us from pointing the finger at them, and they applaud anyone who points the finger at us.
Yo, I'm about to probably start a conspiracy right quick, but I just want to. Hey, so I know Jay-Z was popping for 10 summers, like he said, right? But do anybody know that period of time when he started popping, like making a bunch of money? Like what? I don't remember, but I want to go do research.
Leo Cohen.
Where? With Cohen?
When he started messing with Leo.
And what year was that? You remember?
That was right after the break of Rockefeller. So he became president of Def Jam.
Is it 2011?
Yeah,
2011.
around that time, the
So
price of
listen, I ain't gonna start no conspiracy theory. I ain't gonna try to. But listen, 2011 was when he made that Fred Hampton line, right? Fred Hampton died, and on the same day I was born, and blah
Yep,
blah blah
December the
blah.
4th.
Yeah.
that was him
So
and Jeezy.
yeah, was it Yeezy?
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
Kanye. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So again, I ain't putting it out there, but it will be very interesting to see how white power structure said, "Oh yeah, that's him. That's the one we need to right." And then he excels. He make all this money, and now him and his wife is literally recreating what Black Panthers stood for. Huey Newton and Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton has a quote that says, "What a suffer. What will he do to black capitalists?" You remember?
He said that he would beat them to death with a copy of the Black Panther Party's newspaper.
So it's a good chance that Black Fred Hampton would physically assault Jay-Z if they was on the same playing field. But for some reason, Jay-Z is convincing himself and maybe other people that he's
Right.
the new like he's the new Fred Hampton, and him and his wife Militant and black fits, and but they're dressing all the black. It will be amazing if that's what's going on right now, right?
Yeah, but
Well, I know he's restructuring it, but it'll be amazing if somebody's behind the scenes are like, yeah, this is a good opportunity to,
to
right? Because
grab him,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
But I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that it's far fetched because I wholeheartedly believe that Jay-Z and Beyonce, as Dr. Boyce Watkins says, and I know some people don't care for Dr. Boy, but he did make a point that they are creations, just like a lot of these celebrities. They're
yeah,
creations of white folks.
hmm
absolutely.
So
You
they wouldn't have it, they wouldn't have what they have if it wasn't for white folks.
you was on point, brother. It's August 8th, 2011.
Woo! I hope that ain't the case.
Wow.
I really hope
Yeah.
that ain't the case.
And
That's
think
so
about it. This is when he thought he never talked about anything political before that. He always down Nas for talking political. He started talking political in that Watch the Throne album, 2011, when he talked about I was born the same day that Fred Hampton
Hampton
died,
died. Yes, he
and that,
did.
that whole song talks about how man, black excellence and everything
yeah,
is brought up in the album. And now look, he looks like the guy who the famous artist who
Basquiat.
there you go. Look at his style now. He's morphing into that, right?
Yeah,
Come on now,
listen.
think
Because I
about it.
was wondering why Jay-Z wore his hair like that. So tell me that's how the artist.
One
Can
of
you
his
tell me
favorite,
about?
yeah, one of
Mhm.
his favorite artists from New York, whose birth, from that street art.
Yeah,
He's starting to morph himself into that look.
Basquiat. Yeah.
Yeah,
And what are the what I mean what's the politics of Basquiat? Like you say he's just a street artist or
I mean, I don't think he was heavily political. I haven't seen anything, but I
no.
mean,
okay.
he wasn't radical at all. But I
Oh,
think
Mhm.
he made art that maybe radical people embrace in some kind of
Right.
way.
okay, and Jay-Z's just mimicking his style. So that's why he has the
Now, I mean,
hair.
I would say too, he does look like if you pull up Basquiat, he's kind of starting to
He
look like
mimics it. Plus, he's the one now telling us about we got to invest in art. The art talk came around Jay-Z around that 2011. He started talking about him putting money into art. Now the Dumbo thing, the same. He's
right,
starting to show us. You know, be like me. I'm a dropout. Not saying nothing wrong with a high school dropout, but he's been applauded for those for not being part of the establishment.
right,
Um, think about it. This man is supposedly a billionaire, supposedly buying an NFL team, all from the failures that deemed out and structured our community. From the '80s, from the crack era, from
hmm
from all these things. Now this man is morphing into this businessman with making all these great deals. Remember, he started to shake hands with the Bill Gates, the Warren Buffetts. That's,
Absolutely.
that was definitely another phase for him to sell this propaganda,
hmm
and he definitely producing it in the songs. He's doing the same thing that Damon John did with the flip and flop. I took one hat and I flipped it 20 times, and now Fubu's worth $2 billion. That same mentality that they
right,
selling us, instead of us realizing that that's not the important thing, that's a mask. The most important thing is us, understanding the policy and politics, and that's what um, Professor Dr. Ball is basically saying in this book that needs to be taken notice.
Have you
Absolutely.
have you
And
all just
Hold on, brother. Hold
Okay,
on, brother
okay.
Safo, because I kind of wanted to move into something. I was kind of trying to, but I wanted to jump into the origins of it. And so on page 14, Dr. Ball says that I'm talking about the origins of this buying power, right?
Hmm.
He says buying power has its origins in government labor statistics meant to help assess where wages should be set relative to inflation. He says, but it is now today mostly a phrase created and propagated by marketers in an attempt to assist the business community govern its advertising revenue, right? And so then I'm gonna flip back to page 4, where he says that it's really about, he said, the black bourgeoisie. They're behind this. He says capturing the black market, however, has limitations given the limitations on black economic potential. For the segment of the black bourgeoisie involved in media, journalism, and advertising to capture meant delivering a newly created black market packaged in a mythic economic strength labeled buying power to white corporate and ad buyers. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
So basically what he's saying here is that they that the black bourgeoisie are invested in this myth. They're saying, look, we need to put it out there. We need to pump it up, right? Because what this will do, this will have white ad corporations spend money to target or to capture revenue from the black market. And so what are your thoughts? I'm sorry, black market. So what are your thoughts on that?
One of the things I like to share, because I don't know if you saw when he talked about John Johnson, and John
Yes,
Johnson
I
is
did see
probably
that.
like the biggest. I don't want to. He's probably the biggest user of this in the early stages. But Jet and Ebony magazine, right? While we loving on the Jet Beauty of the Week and that Coca-Cola thing at the bottom, we don't know. We don't know at that time. Like, yo, he using us. Or you see the lipstick and you see the Pepsi on the. And so I think that's one of the major things that that this book has exposed. But when you talk about like the black bourgeois controlling and controlling within limitations, I hate to drop this bomb, but when we dive into Black Wall Street, right? Anything that's a black version or white version, you should really look into it. But when we
Mm,
dive into that and see that they weren't independent and running so economically in this utopia, it was a small group of people controlling all the resources, and the majority of those people in Greenwood, the neighborhood in Tulsa, was poor.
Good
Black
point.
people was poor and working for white people. So it's like when you start to look at that, you actually have to start kind of reevaluating history.
come
Why
on, talk
why
about it,
why are we
Geechee.
not celebrating the Elaine riots and the other riots that actually had more collective work, and why are we celebrating the one that looks exploitive like White Wall Street, right? And so I think it's important. Like I'm telling you, this myth opened up a whole lot of cans, but it will have us having this knee jerk reaction because one, people who close their proximity to whiteness become celebrated to us, right? So people who
Hold on, wait a minute, Geechee. Say that one more time. People who do what?
black people who are able to close their proximity to whiteness become celebrated by us. So
Mm,
the celebrities and the people with money who can make the moves. So Jay-Z can go to Europe and rent a boat for $125,000 a night. We're like, oh, he balling, he got the bag, and getting the bag is really trying to close your proximity to whiteness, and so those people will be celebrated. And so we'll see. Like again, we have to revalue history by looking at this. We talk about cooperative economics, we talk about Ubuntu, we talk about these things, but when it comes to practicing it,
Mm.
I'm not sure.
mm. Brother Safo, I know you wanted to say something, brother. I think we probably went in another direction.
It's well, it's fine. I think this is still tangentially related to what to where we've gone now. But just a real quick point about Jay Z. I seem to recall more of one of his recent videos called Family Feud. Have you all seen that video, the Family Feud, where it's generation after generation after generation depicted of Jay Z's family more and more staunchly becoming a part of the power structure.
Mm.
And and there's even one scene, I believe, if I'm interpreting this correctly, where his descendants are a part of the paramilitary or military forces that are quelling mass uprising and mass rebellion. Okay. So Jay-Z is in this video, he's laying out what he intends for his family and his descendants to become within the system of white supremacy, not to rebel against the system of white supremacy, but to be fully entrenched within the system and merge and his family to be merged within the system of white supremacy and capitalist domination. So he's not talking about getting rid of the elites. He's talking about his family being a member of the elite.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. You got me wanting to go watch the video when we get off the live stream. I'm gonna go to YouTube.
Good breakdown.
Yeah, that was a really good breakdown and watch that. I heard the song on the 444 album, but I didn't watch the video. And so I'm definitely gonna check that out. Derek Ball also tells us, he said buying power is not wealth, right? He says it cannot be invested at will and used to create more for its investors. So a lot of us will hear, oh, Black people have the buying power of $1.2 trillion. And then not only do it doesn't stop there. And then people will compare Black buying power to, other nations' economies and say that we spend more than other nations, economies. And so it doesn't stop there. So people would think that we're wealthy people, that we're wealthy. If you can spend $1.2 trillion, then you're wealthy. So Dr. Ball said buying power is not wealth, right? It can't be invested at will and used to create more for its investors. And you and I both know, Brother T, that we don't have the assets, right? Because Shapiro did a beautiful breakdown in his book, The Hidden Cost of Being African American. And he said, look, Black people were locked out from creating wealth. They couldn't create wealth. They don't have any assets. So then you're thinking, okay, how am I spending so how can I be wealthy to say? So we say we're spending $1.2 trillion, which we know is a lie when you just look at the numbers. And then for someone to believe that if that is true, then that means we are wealthy is ludicrous because we only control what they say 1% of the national wealth. And so it's really bananas. It's really crazy when you start like applying literally like when you're applying critical thinking skills to the data, and to the information. Go ahead, brother Geechee. You seem like you want to get in.
I was just agreeing. I spend time in Costa Rica, and for $4, you can get, I only eat plants, but you can get 3 or 4 days worth of fruits and vegetables and herbs for $4. So living on a country like that or other country, $1 trillion will be a lot. But in America, when you don't own the means of production or control anything, again, the more money you get, I'm not gonna share the name, but one of the people that we was talking about backstage, he tells me how he has money, he has a lot of influence, but he tells me how this equates to power. But he also told me about this time where he was trying to buy land and they doubled the price on him. So obviously your money didn't get you to it. The land is not for sale, and you thinking you're gonna come with your little whatever to buy land. It's like, okay, well, this is the price now, right? And so, and the last point, this whole concept of, we might get into this whole concept of buying politicians, get your money up and then buy politicians. Let's say that might be true, right? LeBron James at the time was worth $400 million. Michael Bloomberg blew $400 million on a campaign he knew he wasn't going to win. So you telling me LeBron had to give his whole net worth to buy a politician that Michael Bloomberg can, throw pennies at him in his book? Like, again, this whole concept of buying your way into political power is just crazy.
We tell our on our discussions in our think tank, we tell people all the time, you're not, on this very point of buying politicians, you're not going to match dollar for dollar with the Koch brothers.
No, you can't. Murphy. You can't.
That's never going to happen.
Oh,
What
Also,
about I'm sorry, I was going to ask really quickly, Veronica, just really quickly, brothers. What about, because I was one of those people that said we gotta buy the politician. We gotta have economic power so that we can get political power. We gotta throw money at them collectively in an agenda. So you're saying collectively, and I just want to make sure I hear you all correctly. So you're saying collectively, we pull our resources together, and we buy politicians. You're saying that it wouldn't be a good strategy to purchase politicians. I'm saying even at the state level. I'm not even talking about the federal level. Even at the state level, you're saying that it's impossible, basically.
Let me give you a number. So I don't know if Jared covered this, but when he was doing something, it made me run into and find it.
Okay.
Elon Musk, one man, in his personal account has more money than all 126 non-white owned banks.
Mm.
In America, there's 126 non-white owned banks. Elon Musk, one man, has more money than all of those banks.
Wow.
See what I'm saying? So, like, it's if you want to, let's go to Baltimore.
I was just about to say, like, let's go again.
Let's
Okay.
go to Baltimore. I know there's three, Weinberg, and there's a couple other people. There's 3 or 4, and there's one black family that has some money there, but they don't have the money equivalent to these white families. But the owner of the Ravens, right? If a large amount of black people pool their money together, they still won't be able to match what that owner of the Ravens has. And that's just him. So imagine if him plus some other people like Warnock and these other people. It's just not feasible. You can't outspend white people who control the money, control the resources, and control the institutions that they build off of your labor and your tax dollars.
Sure. That's true. And we think about this. We say, a lot of people say, why couldn't we get Barack to do certain things? Well, his campaign raised about $1 billion. How much that come from black people? And you wonder why we was voiceless. $1 billion to raise his campaigns.
Mhm.
So he had no words for us at all.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. You think about when Jared talks about, and we share this too in our group, we have to focus more on wealth as opposed to income. So if we talking about wealth, right? Imagine what it would be like, because we talking about lotto and some other stuff we invest in. Imagine what it would be like to take all your life savings to give to a politician and you outbid it. You ain't getting that money back. Hey, I need a refund. That's not gonna happen. So why would you tell black people to spend their last to give to this man who's gonna get outspent by the next white man? It's not like we got the money to re-up and we can get it back. We're gonna have to go back to work and try to get our money up again.
Yeah,
that's right.
There was a report that came out in 2014, where it was determined by these 2 scholars. They did the research. They studied the laws and policies that were implemented over the past 50 or so years by Congress, and they found consistently that if a policy was hated by the masses of people, but liked by the elite, Congress would pass that law. If a policy was hated by the elite, but embraced by widespread masses of the people, they would reject that law. They wouldn't pass that law. Okay, so essentially, what we have here is an oligarchy. Okay, we don't have a government or a system wherein the majority rules or widespread or popular support for a policy or law.
No, democracy. Yeah, you're talking about democracy. You're talking about ideal democracy. No, democracy doesn't exist. Right. Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, Safo.
Yeah, we live in an oligarchy, and so the political system is run by a ruling elite of all white people, ruling class white folks, and and to your point about state politicians versus the federal politicians, local.
Safo, I just want to say one thing before you just made a hell of a point when you talked about how democracy that's a lie. This is not a democratic society, and you said that it's a few, right? A few white folks who control, they control everything, right? And so it's funny to me that people will say, oh, by 2030 2030, by 2040, we're going to be the majority in America. The white folks going to be the minority. So that means we're going to have, and I'm sitting there looking at them like, man, if you don't own and control the resources, you don't own and control the wealth. You ain't got, and if you don't have the wealth, you don't have the power. So it doesn't matter whether they become the minority and we become the majority. Just look at South Africa.
Look at Africa.
Look at South Africa. Literally, South Africa. You go right there. The white folk, they are that, like Sister Veronica said. Just all of Africa. Look at it. We're the majority over there, and the white folks are coming, but they control the land, they control the resources, right? They control the government. So even though the government look like you and I, is really the French and the British, they're still controlling a lot of the government. So go ahead, brother Asafo.
Yeah. So that to your point about state politicians or even local, municipal politics and what have you. Glenn Ford, who was the founder of Black Agenda Report, who passed away recently, God rest his soul. He was able, he did a lot of lecturing on this point to increasingly more and more, and he uses Cory Booker's Rise to Power as a case study to where, these, constellation of right-wing groups and these oligarchs are increasingly funneling and pushing more funds and money into running politicians on a state level and on a local level. We're talking about, mayors and what have you, So even on a local level, even on mayoral races or, state senate or state congress, what have you, we're still competing with the billions and billions of dollars that are being routed to, pet politicians. So we're still competing. So even, that's just, to your point.
No, I appreciate that. And look, it was a troll. I had to get a couple of trolls out of here. This isn't Sinetta TV or, I mean, no shot over there, but I'm just saying over here, it's a totally different culture. So if you come here to learn, I'm all for it. But if you're coming to troll my guests, I have to block you. It is what it is. Go ahead, Sister Veronica.
Hi. So often we hear, our own people, saying one of the ways we can build wealth is in the stock market. And the stock market is so volatile. And since 2008, all the wealth that so-called has been built has gone in directly into the stock market for the 1%. How can you, first of all, we don't have the money to invest in the stock market. And if we do, it's not very much. And you can count on every 7 to 10 years, the stock market collapsing. So, that's not a good investment. It's not sound.
No, thank you for that. I do, Sister Veronica, just speaking candidly, I do invest in the stock market. And I've made some good money doing it. But I do hear what you're saying, that collectively, like you said, some people may not be able to do it. And then with it being so volatile, people lose their money all the time. And so I agree 100% with you.
Yes, and the stock market is inflated because what's going on is the feds are basically giving money to the corporations who buy back their own stock to inflate the prices, of the stock.
No, that makes sense. Brother Geechee? No? All right. And so moving into economic nationalism, Dr. Ball says, well, look, this is weird because, we've been hearing start our own businesses. That's a way that we can create wealth for our babies. We can create generational wealth. Let's start Black-owned businesses. And I'm all for starting Black-owned businesses. I support Black-owned businesses. I am a Black business owner. And so I like it. I like the freedom that, I have. I can, between teaching and running my business, if I want to go to Africa, I am actually in the 3 months I can go. And Brother Geechee, you're self-employed. You do whatever you want to do when you want to do it. But some people, our ancestors have created that, has pushed the notion or promoted the notion that this is the way to create wealth. Like, if you want to create wealth, then you better get a business, right? And where do we get that from? Well, it says it. I love how he gives us this timeline on page 16 and 17. He says, it started with, in 1897. It says, for instance, talking about the world's first black woman law professor, Ludi A. Light. And then he goes to 1900, Booker T. Washington and the National Negro Business League. And then he says by 1925, Marcus Garvey was promoting the concept of black buying power. He says, and then, you had by 1932, an economist, Paul K. Edwards, he published something. And so we've been hearing this, for, almost over a century, right? That we need to create, we do have black buying power, and that we should, harness that, right? Establish businesses and circulate our dollars amongst each other. And that is a way to create wealth. And it seems like Dr. Ball is saying, no, that's not, it's not going to create wealth for us. So what are your thoughts on that, family?
So I would definitely agree. So again, when you think about industries, not only because of wealth and, the continuous racism, but public policy prevents a lot of us from even entering certain industries. So you can only enter so much industries. So when he talk about there are 3 million black-owned businesses in America with 0 paid employees, that's I ain't got no employee. I can't afford to pay any employees. So who wealth am I building? I ain't building no wealth. I don't want to build wealth in that aspect. And so being relegated to certain industries is one thing, right? And if you think entrepreneur is the way, you normally compare yourselves to entrepreneurs who had access to capital and who had it's like I don't know if it was your show or whatever, but they was talking about the UPS business. The UPS business, they had like $100 startup at that time, which would have been like I think even $3,000 to $12,000 now, depending on what inflation you go with. They was in their uncle's basement who actually had a tavern, so they had access to money. They partnered up with another people who had access to money, and then they built their business off of that. So if you're saying, well, all black people can do the same thing, again, we're missing the points of there's public policy and there's things that prevent black folks from having the type of capital they need to have a thriving business. Right? There's so many stats out there. On top of that, again, we talking about what do you call it? The Nguzo Saba. It's two principles that talk about cooperative economics. Cooperative economics is not all of us all starting a business, and I'm selling shea butter, you selling shea butter, he's selling shea butter, and she's selling t-shirt. That ain't no damn cooperative economics. But that's in our mind. That's what it is. And we gonna build wealth off of, well, y'all two haggling because he got raspberry and you got. You know what I mean? And I used to tell Jabari this, and I know he used to be frustrated, but if we got 20 businesses in the black community, and 15 of them are barbershops, yo, how many times you can get your hair cut this week?
Right.
Or maybe I can circulate and say, Bar, you line me up. I'm going to let Sundiata do the bed. And then, come on, yo, like, so we only relegated to certain businesses. And we have to, take that into consideration. And so, again, those 3 million businesses who have 0 paid employees, they ain't gonna build no wealth no time soon. It's gonna be rough because the wealth that they're talking about is normally come from capitalist exploitation. Somebody else working for you and building all the resources that you sell, that you make the money. You just sit at the top and chill.
Good point,
brother Safo.
I would only add that this question is actually addressed. excuse me. In a report that was released, I believe, was it this year? And that actually Dr. Ball played a role in putting together. The name of the report, for those who are listening, is Black Entrepreneurship's Lethal Pre-Existing Condition. And this report was published by the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. And they say in their report, one of the key findings, and I'll read it here: increasing Black entrepreneurship has not corresponded with economic growth. Black entrepreneurship greatly increased between 1992 and 2012 from 3.6% of all firms to almost 10%. So I believe later in the report, they break that down as it being about 2 million additional Black businesses, okay? Yet even with Black entrepreneurship increasing almost threefold, the proportion of Black revenue decreased from 1% to 0.5%. Also, during this time period, Black median income did not increase with Black entrepreneurship. In fact, median Black household income only increased by just over $3,500 after sharply declining in 2000 and 2007. As income climbs in recent years, revenue has continued to decline.
Oh my
So
goodness. So hold on.
you
Tell me the name of that article again, brother.
Black entrepreneurship's lethal pre-existing condition.
Okay.
So we're talking about, and this goes back to a point that was made previously about developing a Black entrepreneurial mindset or what have you. We're increasing Black businesses. We're increasing, the number of Black people owning businesses, but it's not translating to,
industry.
an increase in wealth.
Right.
Yeah, not even an increase in wealth from what you just said. You said an increase in income as well.
In income.
Yeah. So you said it's called Black Entrepreneurship Lethal. What's the
Black
rest?
entrepreneurship's lethal pre-existing condition. And the subtitle is the racial wealth divide during the COVID crisis.
And why isn't it popping? Okay, yeah, I see it now. Okay.
You put in the private chat.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna drop it. Yep, in the chat, and I'm gonna also put this link. Put this in the chat, and put this in.
I was dropping some things in the private chat too just now. So I got the playspent.org. That's a simulation game that can kind of get you into the eyes of the average American, really the average Black American in their day-to-day choices. And then also what we get wrong about the closing the racial wealth gap. There's like 10 myths that is spread out there. Black business only, circulating the Black dollar. All of those are in that study. But that play spent one is a simulating game. It'll be great for you to play with your kids. Hell, if we had time, we could have simulated it on here as well. But that's more of a real condition to what the average Black American has access to in the day-to-day decisions they have to make to take care of certain things that they don't have, like that liquid cash that they could just invest $100 a month in the stock market or buy this or buy that. So.
No, absolutely. But let me ask you. Let me ask the panel this. So, do you think that we should not start Black-owned businesses? Because I'm still an advocate. I'm an advocate for starting your own business.
So here's the thing, real quick. Notice again when we talk about cooperative economics, do we know that there's actually Black cooperatives out there? Do we know that there's a history of Black cooperative? Jessica Gordon Nimhart, we did an interview with her the other day, and we studied her book. Why are we talking about starting cooperatives? Now, if you talking about starting cooperatives, I'm like, yeah, let's rock. Right? When you go to Red Emma's in Baltimore, that's a cooperative, right? And so, if we're talking about starting cooperatives, that will be helpful, but it's just not going to be the solution. It's like you said on your show the other day. It's multi-layer of things.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely, and I stand on that.
Yeah, and one of the things that Boyce said, and I caught a little bit of the show when he was saying something about wanting your leaders to be wealthy, and then he turned around and said, well, everybody should be business owner, and then he said your leaders going to provide jobs, and I'm kind of like, whoa, you went a couple different places because you ain't talking about cooperative ownership. You're talking about the leaders owning the business and providing jobs, but then you just said everybody should be owners. It's like we don't need so many businesses.
In the barter and build think tank, there are times where we've discussed that, and I liken it to like a chocolate covered trickle down economics. Because this idea, I go back to something I stated earlier. So the idea is kind of like, we're going to find the form of economic solidarity is really an upward transfer of what minimal wealth that we have, to the elites. And then they do the investing, and then they do the job creation and all like that. White folks did this with trickle-down economics. And after 50 years of doing it, it's been proven that it doesn't work.
Right. Not at all. Absolutely, good point. Because Reaganomics, that was Reaganomics, correct? He came up with the theory of trickle down and no institution, no jobs, or no industry has trickled down to the masses to help in any way. So, but you hear a lot of capitalists push that theory.
Well, because they got rid of the unions, one of the reasons why we had, wealth after World War II was because we had, several political parties fighting for, to increase, workers' rights. Reagan, the first thing he did when he got into office is he fired all of those, you know, airport workers.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Good point. Really good point. I love how Dr. Ball encourages us. He says, we had to develop, he said, the difference, right, between power as economic strength, he says, as is conventionally understood in buying power, a concept developed by business, advertising, marketing, and government interests, and where power is defined only as a group's ability to enrich those interests. He says genuine economic strength is measured in wealth, right? And so it's like we have to know the difference. I also like how he talks about the power of the media. I don't think people really understand how powerful the media is, and that it's propaganda in everything that we watch, whether it's, our favorite TV shows. He says whether it's the news, in the news, and my mom, and she's probably in the chat. She'll probably kill me for saying this. My mom, I'm telling you, if it's on CNN, she'll come to me. She'll tell me like it's Bible. If she saw it on CNN, if she saw it on MSNBC, or if she saw it on NBC, ABC, it is the truth. But it's not just my mom. It's a lot of us, because the news, they come on and you see, the guy in his suit, and they're showing you things. They talk so objective, right? It sounds like the information that they're presenting is objective, when a lot of it is really subjective, and a lot of it is propaganda. But we don't view news as propaganda. People view the news as an outlet for an outlet.
Well researched,
so they're looking at it like this is really the truth. This is really happening. And we have to understand, and we have to be able to or learn how to identify the propaganda in the things we see, movies we watch, television shows we watch, the news. I even had to tell Isaiah, brother T, that, a lot of the sports that he likes to watch, I said, oh, that's rigged. He said, no. I mean, he argued me down, brother T. Oh, no. You mean I watch football? All of them would have to be in on it, and I said, do you know who runs the entertainment? I said, you do realize that these sports shows are entertainment, right? And you do know who runs the entertainment. Like, I mean, if you want to watch it, that's cool, but just understand that it's entertainment, and understand that these people are being controlled, that the people you're watching. So they already know who's going to win. They already know who's going to be in the Super Bowl next year. You do know that, right? And he argued me down. He argued me down. And so anyway, but I'm going to go ahead. I think Brother Asafo wants to get in on it. Brother Asafo, yes, sir.
Well, my response to that would be, there's this emphasis on kind of a toxic objectivity in the news media. So if someone, so for example, if the Representative King, whoever it was, who was an avowedly, openly racist politician, who I think was just lost his seat a couple of years back, he says something about, how, people of color owe a debt to Western civilization, basically saying that Western civilization civilized people of color throughout the world, and blatantly racist. So what CNN would do is have someone come on to advocate to see if is it racist, and then someone come on to debate to see if it's not racist. Everyone knows it's racist, but the CNN anchor, the CNN guy or woman is like, well, is it racist? Isn't it racist? I don't know, and so they're standing in the middle of obvious, like I said, it's kind of a toxic objectivity to where you're playing it down the middle when the obvious truth is staring you right in your face. The obvious truth is, Donald Trump is a sexual predator and a racist and, a despicable human being. But they're going to have people come on and debate this Or is he a despicable human being? Or is he not a despicable human being? The anchor's like, oh, I don't know. It's just, there's no
It's like the courtroom.
right
Got to put the
there.
got to put the doubt in the mind.
Right. It's again, like I say it for a third time, it's toxic objectivity. You have, uh, people coming up here who are not willing to, speak the truth for fear of being seen as bias.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Brother Geechee, I see you want to get at this question
Yeah.
at the bottom of the screen. Go
Well,
ahead,
yeah,
brother.
that too. But one of the things I wanted to add on to what the brother, Safwa and brother T just said. But remember, Baba Amos was one of the elders who talked about uh, the white power structure has power in so much that they can control the domains of discourse, right? So what we argue about, they in control. So when they put that down in your mind, you arguing about stuff like critical race theory. You trying to, they ain't never taught that stuff. Like you're not really fighting for that. Um, so that is important.
Hmm.
Now, sister said about the elephant in the room, building wealth in the capitalist system, is that exploitation factors into the equation. Where does that fit? Loving Bob and him is the way I do. I knew that he struggled with the economic stuff, right? He actually even in his book he said, "I'm not an economist. These are suggestions based off of whatever." But he said, "I'm not a trained economist." And anytime he was challenged, he was struggling with it. When he was talking about group capitalism in a kind of way. He was, trying to work through that. So I would say that a lot of times where people will follow Amos and others blindly and not even respect them for who they were and what they were and try to like take everything, right? So if Dr. Amos is a chef and nutritionist, he doesn't know how to change a damn oil change for the car. I probably wouldn't listen to all this. We have some people who do that, right? And if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of us have racial analysis, but we lack class analysis. And that's why we
Mhm.
will, you know, like the black capitalists and all these other things. We really struggle with class analysis.
Yeah.
Um, and again, we have ancestors and elders who told us about that. Kwame Nkrumah can tell you about the class issues. George Jackson can tell you about the class issues. Nana Kuntu can tell you about, like, it's so many people can tell you about the class issues, but sometimes those people don't make it into our sphere because um, the power structure does a good job at silencing them, right? Last thing, Kwame Ture used to say that we both can be against something, but that doesn't mean we both are for something. So all of us are against the white man controlling us. Some of us want equal opportunity and control as a group, and then some of us want, I want to be the man, I want to be the woman, right? So both of us want to get rid of that white boy, but not both of us want to see the collective work. So I think it's important to study neocolonialism and get a really, really good class analysis before we begin to start creating these solutions and jumping on these solutions.
Hey, Geechee, on the point of blueprint for Black Power, do you want to break down the where are they now aspect, or?
Yeah, so we working on this project. Where are they now? Blueprint for Black Power. And so again, I can't tell you, I don't know too many people who love Dr. Amos more than me. So I went through that book multiple times, studied it, read it. Hey, listen, I don't know.
Geechee, you know who you talking to.
Hey, I'm
You
just
know who you
saying.
talking to.
So I started to follow some of the people that he started talking about in the book. And when we come out with this thing, I think we probably gonna do it on episodes first. We're gonna write something about it. We're gonna do a lecture, but I think we're gonna start off with episodes. But majority of the people that he suggested, some of the failing is
Are
horrendous.
you talking about which chapter are you talking about? When he's
Throughout the book,
okay,
he used different examples, right? Like for
right?
instance, Larry Lundy was one of the, and I don't get too much into it, but Larry Lundy was one of the people he talked about. And
Mm-hmm.
Larry Lundy was moving up. He was working through franchise. This was the chapter when he started talking about franchise as an option, and he was moving up through the franchise of Pizza Hut, and he was getting bank moving up the franchise. So the white boys were saying, "Listen, we can't. He's moving up too high. Let's try to get him, some stores in a certain place." So they offered him a couple places. He turned it down. But then New Orleans popped up where Larry Lundy was from, and it was like, "Yo, we can get you a market there." He goes down there and he opens up the market. I think 23, 24 plus stores, and a couple things happen. in New Orleans is not like other cities. You have to adjust your business to the community, right? Well, some of the rules in the franchise don't allow you to do that. So you have to stay protocol. So you end up losing money and losing customers. And you still got to pay them royalties and those fees and those other things. These people had this man down to a point where he was I think he was in debt from those the fees and stuff, maybe like $10 million or something, $10 to $12 million. I get the facts when we come up with the joint. And they got him to a point where they went and closed 20 stores in a week from him. Right? Now, there was a settlement, right? There was a settlement of like $9 million. Take the $9 million settlement, something like that. Okay, I'm throwing out numbers. I'll get you the details later. Settlement was something like $9 million, but he was in debt $12 million. See what I'm saying? Not only that, this dude had, like, I think it was testicular cancer. So he's like dying, and these people are socking it to him. But if you just take a bird's eye view, you look like, yo, they set him up. And franchise is probably not the way to go, because they still controlling everything that you do. And and so he's just one of the many. I'm talking about, I was like, I kept looking. I was like, oh, let me try the next person and try the next person. And majority of them didn't work out, right? And even the ones that did work out, that's up for y'all to determine when we bring it
I
up.
can't wait.
I can't wait.
I can't wait for it. I think this is going to be powerful.
Yeah.
Please write and publish, this work. Are you going to do multiple publications, or are you going to do just one publication where you talk about where are they now?
So we're probably gonna do and we still trying to decide this as a think tank, but we probably will put out episodes and have tidbits of it, and then write more into detail at later on. But we do have it like in a lecture form.
I can't wait
at this
I
point.
can't.
But we could definitely do a rollout of episodes. Like, we might cover one person per episode and kind of dive into it.
Because my question was, when we was reading that book, Dr. Ma'at, was how does this look? These things were mentioned. My question was always, how does it look? Like, how does it play out? Because we need to see exactly how these stories play out in order for us to make what these brothers are doing as analysis of it, to see if it works for us. He mentioned so many great things in that book, down for the think tanks, understanding the think tanks, understand how schools, how universities pay these think tanks, and how then institutions and politicians and the government take the leaders of these think tanks and put them in front of heads. And I always ask, how does it look? Because he mentioned some black think tanks, and I never ever went any further to see what are those think tanks doing today, to see how they influence making any change. So this is a good concept that you're coming up with.
Yeah. One of the think tanks is still rolling in DC. There's some black people in there, but and I saw Jabari say these brothers are dark. I ain't trying to be dark. He's just trying to be reality. And I feel like sometimes we do have to go into spaces and be real about things. But let me say this real quick. So the role of a think tank, it's not so hard to understand that when we talked about that Jay-Z thing, that conspiracy that I was cooking up, it's not so hard for a think tank to sit in there and say, how are we going to figure this out? And boom, the buying power think tank operated. All this propaganda, these think tanks do this. White people sit in rooms and decide on how they're going to keep making
money,
plays.
keep wealth.
Right?
Their policies.
So if we don't start having think tanks where we actually thinking instead of regurgitating shit, then we're going to be in trouble. Right? And so it's not about being dark or light or happy or whatever. It's about like being honest and being intellectually honest as opposed to intellectually dishonest.
Okay. I would only add to that, this kind of problem. And I think one of the things that we want to point out as a long-term takeaway from the Where Are They Now pieces is this idea of this kind of apotheosis that we engage in when it comes to our thinkers and leaders, and I think Jared makes this point quite well when it's, comes to, the different Malcolm X and Dr. King and others talk about black buying power, even Amos Wilson and others. We have to understand that sometimes they just didn't get it right. On certain aspects, they just weren't correct on these certain aspects. And we have to be okay with that. Now, does that mean throw them completely out? Absolutely not.
No, thank you.
We have to understand We have to understand that there's certain things that they said or propagated that just weren't true. They just
And
simply
get
weren't
and
true.
get and guess what, brother Safo? I'm pretty sure when we're gone, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be things that we're going to say, and then the next generation is going to say, What brother Safo said, that brother, he didn't have it all right. Brother Geechee didn't have it all right. Brother T didn't have it all right. Sister Veronica didn't have it all right, and that's okay. Just take what do the old folks say? Chew the meat and spit out the bones, and that's what we should be doing. And like you said, that's not to say we're going to bury Dr. Ma'az's work or Geechee Ya or the Bada think tank, but it's to say, hey, I mean, I mean, at, as time go on, the more we collect data,
Mm-hmm.
conclusions change. Things change. The more you can, the more as time go on, and you're collecting
Definitely.
data. We do it all the time in the scientific community. We do it all the time in engineering. Theories that we were building on that we thought were correct initially, we come back later on and we say, that wasn't quite
Right.
right.
Hmm.
It happens all the time. And then what do? You just keep on updating your information. You keep on updating your info.
Let me say something too. Like, so I remember I think this is something Jabari said too. When Jabari was like on the last show, well, all that data and that stuff, that stuff don't have to be, that stuff not always right. We don't have to go by that. Certain things different, right? It's unique that he say that because the data that we arguing, it didn't come from us. It's come from white people. So if you can hold true to this data, why would you try to throw out the actual data? So
Mm-hmm.
we're not doing the research ourselves, and we're not really depending on some of the economists to do the research. So like you getting fed information,
Absolutely.
and again, even like with the circulating the dollar, we've chased that,
Yeah.
and it came up in a book from a sister in 1993. She made up a economist that's not even alive, and she lied about the circulating the dollar. They don't even
Mm-hmm.
have a study on religious spending. So you can't track
Mm-hmm.
what Jewish people. And the Asian community is huge.
Hmm.
Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
Chinese, Philippines.
But
Like,
it
come
sound
on.
good. It
So wait a
sound
minute.
great.
So Geechee, you're saying that information we have. Matter of fact, hold on. Let me go to my Instagram because I think I
Yeah,
put it up. Hold
yeah.
on. Hold on.
It's
Let
no way.
me.
It's no like if you circulate, if you mention this, nobody can cite their source where that came from.
Right.
But
Hold on.
when you look for it, it's gonna come from what's her name? I keep forgetting her. It's a light skinned lady. I'll get her last name, and I'll tell you the book.
Yeah,
You
So
yeah,
talk about the
definitely.
one who
Shoot that to me. It says the
Yeah,
lifespan of a dollar. Asian community 1 month. White community 17 days. Black community six
not
hours.
not
And so
true.
you said that came from. So what's the female name, Geechee?
I'm about to get it right now. I'm about to get it right now.
Mhm.
so I
You
mean,
got.
people.
None of those numbers are true.
No.
Wow.
So it's funny because people always ask, "What's the solution?" Dispelling the myths is part of the solution.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So thank
Boom.
Yes.
You can't move anywhere
Yeah.
if we still have that thought regurgitating these false all these myths. You got to move past it. We got to get out of our system.
Mm. Sister
We tell
Veronica
people,
started
and
laughing.
we can credit Dr. Ball and Black Power Media for this, because they were, and even Geechee was, I feel like Geechee in some way was ahead of the curve on this as well. You know, where is I challenge anyone to tell us where these numbers came from. Anyone,
And then
Sound
like
anyone
it
who's
did.
listening right now.
You know what? It sound good. It sound good. It's just like how we for years we believed of what's the book that talked about the making of the slaves and how it was
The Willie
Mark.
Lynch letter.
the
The
Willie
Willie
Lynch.
Lynch letter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
And come
sound
to find
good.
out, it come to find out, no one could find
right,
any evidence that Willie Lynch ever existed. Like they
right.
said.
But there's a book. There's a book. Baba Keaty had it. He showed me it when I was in Vegas with him, and I got a picture of that too. But there's a book that talk about managing slave, and
Mhm.
that's something that is almost like, what do you call it, a fan, what is it, a fanfic, when somebody is a fan of a book and they write another book. I can't remember what it's called, but
Okay.
it's a good chance
Fan
that
fiction.
somebody, yeah, fan fiction. So it's
Okay.
a good chance that it's a fan fiction because
Mhm.
somebody read that and then they made up something off of it, but
Right.
you
But
ain't
it's
finding
not.
that book.
Yeah, you're not finding nothing about any Willie Lynch, and that's
I
why
want to
when we
just
when we hear, hold on
want to
one
dish.
sec, brother. I just
Okay.
want to say that's why we have to also when we hear things, it's important that we apply, critical analysis. So like you all said, when that figure came out, a lot of what happened, a lot of our leaders, a lot of our, black media outlets, they put that stat out there, and we didn't apply any critical analysis. We just accepted it. Just like Dr. Ball, he talks about on page 14, these different reports that come out, and how when they come out, it says that, they never explained their methodology. Oh yeah, that's it. Let me see it one more time, Brother Geechee.
It's Brooke Stevens.
Brooke Stevens, talking
Talking
dollars,
dollars making
making
sense.
sense. So the stat came out of there, and you're
That
saying that when you looked it up, she didn't even have a reference for it.
Listen, any research like that, it will be public for public consumption. Any research like that, and so for no economist alive or dead knows this guy or knows that study. Not to mention the study is impossible to even do, but there's no book that has it in there.
But can I
Now look
also,
at
I
this.
want to interject one thing as well. Even if the numbers were true as far as the Asian and Jewish and black communities, what have you, even if those numbers were true, given the amount of poverty in these communities, the horrendous amounts of poverty in the various Asian communities, does it even matter? We're talking about, so obviously the circulation, if it's true that the Asian dollar, is circulating such and such times or a month or whatever in the Asian community,
Mm-hmm.
based on the poverty, the rampant poverty, the horrendous amount of poverty, the horrendous amount of people in those communities who are receiving welfare and public assistance and all types of other things. Obviously, it doesn't matter. Obviously, the circulation of the Asian dollar isn't benefiting the entire community.
That's a
Obviously,
fact.
if you look at the the numbers that came out of the Federal Reserve last year, that shows that the majority of wealth in many of these communities is held by a small elite group, while the rest of the people, 80% of the people, are wealthless.
Mm-hmm.
Where's this circulating of the Asian, Jewish, or any of these dollars? Where is it helping the masses of people, even if it were true?
Good point.
Facts. And so I do want to wrap up. I know he ends chapter 2 with discussing the media system. And he says he called it, he described it as one of apartheid. He said, we already have a majority population of the so-called people of color, women and the poor, who are relegated to accept an imposed media environment produced by and for a minority affluent white population. Oh my gosh, Geechee, when I read that, I was like, boom, like what a way to end like this particular chapter. Just letting us know, I mean, as he stated before in the chapter, that they use the media as a machine. And when we say they, we're talking about the white elite, or the white elite, who use the media as a propaganda machine, as a means of pushing propaganda. But who are they pushing propaganda to? The majority. So they're the minority, and they're sending these messages out, right? And they are influencing our thoughts, our opinions, even like you said, the discourse, right?
Right.
Through the use of the media. So he's driving home the power of the media. And so does anyone else want to kind of close out on that thought or that statement that he made at the end of chapter 2?
Yeah, I just think this is one of those opportunities where, Dr. Amos talks about false consciousness, right?
Falsification. Mm-hmm.
Falsification of consciousness, but just having the product being a false consciousness, and you can see how white think tanks can easily, well, I won't say easily, also permeate black nationalist groups, right? And so this myth was one of those things that actually made it to the revolutionary groups as well, or the militant groups. And Dr. Ball talks about this, like this is one of those myths that every group believe and benefit from. The white supremacists, they don't have to deal with public policy anymore. They don't have to do what they're actually supposed to do, because now y'all go out there and get it yourself. I done stole all of your money, and you're gonna take the little bit of money you have and circulate it among yourself, right? The black assimilationists, they benefited from it too because they're closing their proximity to whiteness. They don't even care about the collective. And then the black conscious people are taking it, yes, self-determination. We don't need the man to hand out, and they're saying all these other things. But again, nobody's saying, yo, this myth actually is actually anti-African. To say that, yo, I should pay my tax money to these people and don't demand that it comes back in the form of building my institution and these other things. No, just leave that money there and let's just play with the coins that we have. Like it's powerful how that narrative can make it into conscious movements as well. Not saying this is the only time. There's a lot of times where, there have been supposedly black conscious people who engage in political diversions as well. But I think that's just a powerful example of how, we can be anti-African and be pro-black at the same time.
Brother Safo, you have any closing words on that note? The power of the media system. Any closing words, even just the discussion in general? Any closing words, Brother Safo?
Well, I want to thank you for inviting us to have this discussion with you. We really appreciate it. And I think these discussions are discussions that need to be had more often. Brother T, I think, made a very, very important point when he said that a part of the solution is shredding the myths. Because and we say it all the time in our think tank. If you base your solution on a false premise, okay, and the solution is based and founded on a false premise, then the solution is going to fail even if it succeeds. If we say, okay, well, we need to develop a black business mindset and we need to have more black businesses, and not understanding that we've grown our black businesses and the number of black businesses are growing, and we're still not gaining wealth, we're still not increasing in our income, we're still in the same situation, okay, not understanding that, and we say, okay, so we'll increase the black businesses threefold, okay, through our efforts in the community in Baltimore, Myrtle Beach, and other places, and black people are fundamentally no better off than they were. Then what's going to happen is then more blaming the victim. Oh, are they supporting the businesses? Are they going and buying from these, because at the end, when the solution is based on a false premise and it fails, the victims will be blamed. The masses of people will be blamed. The ideology itself is never blamed. The ideology itself is never questioned, because through the propaganda, it becomes axiomatic.
Through the propaganda, he said it becomes axiomatic, right? It becomes the truth. It becomes Bible. It becomes principle. Thank you so much, Brother Asafo. Sister Veronica, what are your closing words, closing thoughts? Oh, Queen, you're on mute. You got to unmute yourself.
Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed the conversation. I would just suggest that, your listeners, your audience, it's extremely important that we get involved with an organization like the one that we have, because if we don't educate ourselves, politically, we'll never be able to take a critical look at all of these things that are coming at us left and right. I mean, the media, they trashed Donald Trump, but they promoted him first, and if they didn't give him $1 billion worth of free airtime, he would have never, he would have never been elected in the first place.
Brother T?
Definitely enjoyed the conversation, and thank you for everyone adding their input, because I definitely learned a lot. When we talk about business, we talk about, our product to the consumer, right? But one thing that Dr. Amos Wilson talked about is controlling the industry. We must have a functional framework when it comes down to business. A functional framework gives us the ability not just to deal with the community that we're in, but also to deal with abroad. We have to have some type of access that we can do international trade. These are the things that most of the business could not do. For us to look at things as what they are right now, we have to dispel those myths. We have to get rid of those false ideas of what business is and how we can take care of each other and how we can grow. Because we talked about four big myths that flow through our community, down to the buying power, down to how long the money lasting out in each community. Um, you talked about one number that people don't look at, that 40% of their income that goes to their living situation. And as we talk about all the cities in this country, each city dictates how much rent is going to be. A person, and we talked about how much the average African American family make, 40,000. Just that 40% is $16,000 in a year.
Mm.
What's left to do anything else with? So I believe in business, but it has to be a functional framework that allows us to really thrive. And we have to move out of those businesses that only gives us consumer spend. It has to be able to grow, has to be a bigger front. And I hope that he stresses some of these solutions in this book.
Absolutely. And I want to acknowledge, I see Baba Emotep is in the building. He
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
yeah, peace to you, Baba Emotep, of PLM, Pan-African Liberation Movement. He says politics and active awareness of one's relationship and obligation to a people group.
It's your obligation to tell the truth, the whole Black African truth. I love it, Baba.
The
Mhm.
unedited version.
Right, the unedited. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's Sister Veronica. Before we leave, were you the Veronica in the chat when I was talking about my students? And I
Yes.
said, yeah, so what I was saying, and I want to clarify my statements, because you were saying, oh, something about, Black people building companies to compete with defense contractors. What I want my students to know is that that's not their only option, isn't to graduate with an electrical engineering degree and go work for Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, NSA, CIA. I have friends who are defense contractors who work as contractors, because what they did was they went to Lockheed Martin, they went to Northrop Grumman, and they figured the game out. They said, hold up, wait a minute. So you're paying me $40 an hour for a project that you're billing $300 an hour for. Well, what I'll do is just become my own contractor and bid on some of these contracts. And that's exactly what they've been doing. And like I said, I have several friends. So this is not something I'm just making up. Several people I know have literally left with their engineering degrees and have started their own engineering consultant businesses, and they make $300,000 a year. So I don't want my students, hold on, wait a minute, Asafo. I don't want my students to think that their only option is to get a degree, an engineering degree, and go work for Lockheed Martin. That's the only thing that they can do. I don't tell my students that. I tell my students, if you want to be a contractor, go be a contractor. If you want to own your business and do engineering consultant don't limit yourself. You don't have to limit yourself. Go ahead, brother Asafo.
I don't want to be the last word on this, but I'll just say, and this is what we said in our, this actually came up in our discussion the other night. And I'll only say, this is the fundamental problem with capitalism, whether it be white or Black. Do we really need more, weapons manufacturers or weapons or defense contractors, Black or white? Were you talking about the military industrial complex and the weapons and the weapons delivery systems and all these other things that America has used to subjugate the third and fourth worlds and other darker people around the world? Do we really need to be having this discussion about, hey, maybe one day you can be, the one delivering the deadly nuclear missile to the Black city?
That's not what we're talking about at Morgan State University, sir. That's so out of what we're talking about. We're not saying that. So I hope that you didn't
that was quite. I mean, what? So this is what I'm gaining from that. Are you talking about Black participation in the military industrial complex when you said that?
No. What I'm saying is this. Because electrical engineers do all sorts of stuff, brother Safo. And so I don't want to give a lecture on electrical engineering, what it is and all of the different fields that we can go into. but it's not just about nuclear bombs when you're talking about electrical engineering. So I'll just leave it as that. Okay. It's not just about missiles and dropping bombs when we're talking about electrical engineering. There are a variety of fields in electrical engineering. Some people go into, excuse me, hold up, let me finish talking. Some
Sorry,
people go
I
into,
didn't
hold
bring
on,
up
hold on.
defense contractors. You did.
Some people talk about material science. I mean, I brought up defense contractors. That's one example, brother Asafo. Literally, that's just one example. You have some people going into cybersecurity. You know, some people going into language processing, signal and systems, and things of that nature. And so I don't want to have this conversation because then I will begin to start talking over your head, and I don't want to do that.
No,
All right.
ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to do that. So, all right, family. Thank you
This
so
is what
much
you
for.
said.
All right. So anyway, thank you so much, family, for listening to the discussion. I hope that you will join us next Sunday. I think, Brother T, we may not be on next Sunday because I'm going out of town on Friday, and I'll be back. I'm leaving Friday or Saturday, and I'll be back next Wednesday. So we won't be on next week. We'll be on the following week. To discuss chapters 3 and 4. So, family, join us back here, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, we won't be on next Sunday. What we will be on the Sunday after next. Peace